Hi. So today we're going to start a new series looking at some really practical things and practical tools that can help us to live more healthy and well and whole and free. And to start with today, I want to think about our stories. Now, I don't know about you, but I enjoy people's stories. It's one of the things that I love in my job. I really enjoy finding out about people and what their story is, where they've come from, where they've lived, what's happened in their lives, and um, it's a bit like autobiographies, isn't it? There's some really interesting autobiographies that we can read of people, and hearing what's happened in their lives and what's made them, what's how they've become the people that they are, and how they've got into the things that they've got into, for good or for bad, I suppose. Um, and one of the things that we learn at medical school is the importance of the story, or the history, as we call it in training. And the history is really a way of asking a load of questions of people that help us towards working out what the problem is, what the diagnosis is. And it's reckoned that about 80% of diagnoses can be made based just purely on the story. So the story of the pain, the story of the problem, the story of the symptoms that the person has. And doing that in a really good way and asking the right questions helps you make a diagnosis without even examining somebody or doing any tests in about 80% of people, which is quite amazing, isn't it? And it's really important that we remember that in medicine, and we don't rush straight into doing investigations for things. Maybe that's good to remember as a patient as well, that actually um, the story of what happens, when does the pain come, what makes it better, what makes it worse, how long does it last for, what kind of pain is it, all that kind of thing. Really important in helping work out what is going on, more important than the examining and more important than investigations. And actually the investigations are used really to be that final tuning to work out what the problem is. So our stories matter. They matter in medicine, but they matter in our lives as well. And I think it's really easy to forget to ask people's stories. So particularly in our culture now, perhaps particularly again in Western culture, where people move around a lot and they move to different places and they're not growing up with their families and people that know them. Um, we don't know what's happened in people's lives previously. We don't know, we might meet somebody in their 30s or 40s and we don't know what happened when they were children, or what it was like for them going to school or growing up, or even what jobs they've done before maybe. And so we start off from the point that we get to know somebody and we don't really know their story. And so we get used to living in the now and not really thinking about what's happened to us in the past, and what impact that might be having on our lives now. And I know from my own life, and also from friends and people that I've worked with and my patients, that actually what has happened in our pasts has a huge impact on how we are now. And what's happened in our past might be things that were completely out of control. As children, the things that happen where the families we're born into, and the places that we grow up in, and what happens to us at school and growing up, we don't have control over that. But those things can have a really big impact on how we think now, how we feel now, and even physical things that are happening in our bodies now, because everything's connected together. So in this session, I just wanted to have a little think about how we can think about our stories, and what are the important things to think about when we're trying to work out how our past might have affected our present and also our future going forwards. One of the things that I like to get patients to do when they come and they tell me something that's going on, and where we think there may well be some keys from what's happened before, some patterns, is to do a timeline of their life. And by timeline, I've drawn one to show you. So I hope you can see this. You don't need to see the detail, but basically just a line on the page, and above the line asking them to put really positive things that they remember from their lives, and below the line negative things that have happened in their lives. So back as far as you can remember, maybe back to infant school for a lot of people, and thinking, well, oh, I remember at infant school that I wet myself at school, and actually, do you know, I felt really stupid when that happened, and I can just remember feeling really embarrassed and wanting to hide away because I'd done something really stupid. But then I remember that my grandma came to stay when I was about 7, and she stayed a long time, and my grandma was lovely, and she would be really good to me and kind to me and say nice things about me. And so we carry on and we think about, actually, I was bullied and I felt really stupid when that happened, and then my parents split and I felt really responsible for that somehow I was the cause. I'll put this down. But basically working our way through our lives and not just thinking about events that happened, positive and negative, thinking about things that were said, positive and negative. So it might be something like, oh, I remember that teacher that always said I was stupid and I'd never amount to anything. I'd never get my exams. Or, oh, I remember the football coach who was just so kind to me and said what a nice person I was and what talent I'd got and how I persevered. And I remember them saying that, and write that down. And then, oh, I remember how I was bullied at high school and I felt really stupid. And it's really important to remember how you felt. So not just the thing that happened, I was bullied, but how did I feel about that? How do I remember feeling? Did I feel stupid? Did I feel like I wanted to shrivel away and hide? Did I feel like I was a failure? Did I feel like I was responsible for things that I shouldn't be responsible for? Did I feel like I'd caused something bad to happen to somebody else? And so as you're going through the years and just starting to notice and remember just the things that come to mind, you don't have to dig too hard. Just write them down. Write down things that you remember being said, and write down how you felt about it. And I think it's really likely that you'll start to see some patterns that emerge. So it may be that you see some patterns of just feeling really rejected by a lot of people, or that you felt really stupid on a lot of occasions, or that you felt that you'd never succeed at anything, or you felt guilty, or you felt shameful. There can be so many different things, but often those things that happen produce certain feelings in us, certain negative feelings, and there's often a pattern of maybe a couple of things, 2 or 3 things that you can look and think, yeah, that's just been a repeating pattern in my life. So for this, in this week, just noticing some of those things is important. And then the other thing that you can do is to start to think about your family. So we're all born into our families, and sometimes we forget to think what's happened in our families before, what's happened in the previous generations. I think perhaps a bit more with some of the television programs looking at family trees, as it's raised things to people's attention more, and start to realise how patterns in families are important too. And we see recurring patterns of things going on in families. So actually doing a family tree. So another piece of paper, just ordinary piece of paper, I'm down here at the bottom, and just thinking, okay, I'm here in my family. I've got an older brother and a younger sister, and here I am. Okay, let's think about my mum and my dad. What were they like? What were the physical things that happened for them? Again, something that I'm used to doing as a doctor is taking a history of, oh, actually, we see that that particular kind of arthritis runs through the family, or heart disease runs through the family, and we plot it and take the family history, which is part of our history taking. But you can do the same thinking about lots of things. So you can think about the physical things, but you can also think about things like, actually, my mum was always anxious and worried about things, and she always had a lot of pains, and she always thought there was something wrong with her. Um, and actually, I remember that my her mum was the same. She was really anxious and she had trouble with her nerves. And I don't know what they really called it then, but I know she was anxious. And I didn't really know her, my great grand, very well, but there was something that people said in the family about her being really nervous and anxious. And so already we've got this pattern of something going on in the family. there can be patterns of behaviour, so there can be patterns of addiction, there can be patterns of physical problems, all sorts of things that you can start to see, oh yeah, there's patterns of that in my family. And again, that's really helpful to us because it helps us start to understand the environment that we were born into. And actually, oh yeah, my mum was really anxious, and actually my dad was really quite depressed and negative. But I can sort of see why that was, because that's what was happening in their family, and this came from their granddad, and that was happening there. And so we start to understand that this isn't just necessarily genetic, passed on in the genes. This can actually be a behavior kind of thing, that what was modeled to me was this certain way of surviving life or coping with life. Or I can remember, I can remember that when a difficult situation occurred or someone was ill, my mum would get really, really worried about it. This isn't me personally, but you might remember that. Or I can remember that, if I didn't do well at school, my dad would get really, really angry. But then I remember that him saying that his dad used to get really, really angry. And so we build up this picture. Now, this isn't just so that we know about it, it's so that we can actually do something helpful with it. And taking those things, taking the story in your family and the story of your life, and just noticing those key things, so the key patterns in your family and the key patterns through your life, and how that made you feel, is the first thing that I'd like to do in this series, the first step. And what we're going to do with that next week is to start to think about how we can identify some of the key things we believe in our thinking, some of the key things that matter in our thinking that affect us now as an adult. So even though I'm not at school anymore, if I'm in the office and someone is starting to get angry, I feel stupid and I feel like I want to run away and hide, because I feel like I felt when I was bullied at school. Or if there's an opportunity to go for a promotion or a change of career and do something that I've really wanted to do, but something stops me and actually I feel really stupid and that I could never do that because I'm not good enough for that. Maybe that links back to something that happened when I was young. And actually I've learned that when these kind of things happen in my life and it's difficult, then the response is being anxious and being fearful and thinking that something really bad is going to happen. But I can see that that's what happened in my family, and maybe I don't have to carry on being like that. Maybe it's actually possible to change some of those things, some of those patterns of thinking that we have that affect us physically and emotionally, and really practically in life and socially. And maybe we can change, maybe we can rewire our thinking, maybe we can redo some of that programming that happened. And yes, we can. So in the next session, that's what we're going to look at, looking at how our brains get wired and what we can do to change that.